What's going on, everyone? It's Ollie. I've just done 2 exams at school and I'm certainly ready to do some Java programming. So, a lot of you have said that you don't mind that I make tutorials really long, so this one will probably be quite long because we're going to get all of the kind of mouse events done. So, sort of when you hover over let me just bring it up for you. So we've got our player here, he doesn't do anything yet, but we programmed the gravity last tutorial. If you haven't watched last tutorial, go and watch it now. Yeah, so we're going to program sort of when the mouse moves over the blocks, it will highlight them and you can click them and destroy them. We'll also implement some kind of weapon selection kind of thing. So we can start. So let's create the weapons stuff right now. If I make a new class within this class, private class weapon, and we can have some static final integers, and we can give them weapon names and we can give them a value, and you'll see why in a second. So we're going to say, you guys can obviously do whatever weapons you want. I'm going to do unarmed. That can equal 0. Static final int pickaxe, that can equal 1. Static final int what else can we have? I don't really know. A gun maybe? We might program some bullet physics later on. I don't know, but we can stick with those right now. So let's go ahead and build the constructor for the weapon. Public class. Ooh, wait, why am I writing that? Sorry. Public weapon. And we can take an integer called w for weapon, and then we can call a switch statement. And this switch statement will select the kind of default weapon when you first start your class. And we need another variable. That means we can make this a public integer. And let's make all of these public just to get our scopes correct. Public, there we go, public int current weapon, and the reason I'm doing it in all in caps is it's kind of good practice for when you're doing variables that are going to be accessed through the class, and you'll see what that means in a bit. So we're going to switch the W, and default, let's print out a message. This default case will happen if the integer put into the new instance of weapon is not equal to 0 or 1 or 2. And we can say no weapon selected. And then we can break. Otherwise, case 0, that's our unarmed, so we can say current weapon. And not case 0, we can say case unarmed. Even better, we can say current weapon equals unarmed. And then we can say break. And I always put an L instead of a K. Case pickaxe. And then current weapon equals pickaxe. And then break. And then case of it being the gun. Current weapon equals gun. Scroll down a bit. And then break. Okay, now that we've done that, we've basically selected a default weapon. Now this current weapon is equal to either 0, 1 or 2, and we will be using this for different things. Because these are all public variables, we can access them whenever we want later on. So outside the class, we can sort of say if pickaxe is selected. So we can say if current weapon equals pickaxe. So that will basically test if the number that current weapon is equal to 1. Yeah, we can see how that works later on. Yeah, so we can make a method now called public void choose weapon, or let's call it select. Select weapon, and this again takes an integer, and we will copy and paste this switch statement here. just like that. And that means that if we want to change weapons later on, we can do so using this. And then we can make one more method called isEquipped, and this is going to test public boolean is equipped, and it's going to test if the weapon you pass in is currently equipped. So if is equipped, what do we need? We need an integer called W for weapon, and then let's see, we can say if W is equal to current weapon, then return true, else return false. So if the weapon number or whatever, if they type in the weapon into this method and it's not the current equipped weapon, it's going to return false. If it is the currently equipped weapon, it's going to return true. So now that's all nice and built. We can minimize all of this like that. Yeah, and minimize that class, I guess. So we've got our weapon class now. I'm not sure where we should place this. Let's place it below the weapon class. Or no, above it. Make it better. And we'll make a new thing saying mouse events. And now we're going to handle mouse events. So it's probably wise to set up something to handle mouse events in the class, in our game panel class. So come over to the game panel class, and in this, under this, add key listener, we can say, without pressing the hash key, we can say add mouse listener, and be careful when you do the add mouse listener, and remember the difference between mouse listener and mouse motion listener, because both of them contain the same methods, but I've been caught out so many times by it. Mouse adapter, implement all abstract methods, which is nothing because I don't know why. Yeah, but we can add override, and then public void mouse press, and that takes mouse event E, and that's already imported apparently, so copy that, mouse pressed, mouse released, and mouse clicked. I think it's mouse clicked. Yep, it is. Yeah, so like I say, be careful with the add mouse listener and add mouse motion listener, which we're about to add. So add mouse motion listener. So many times I've added, because if I go into here and show you, if I add override, if I type in public void mouse moved, add the mouse event in there. Now the add override annotation becomes valid, and we can see that this is an overridable method of the mouse adapter. But because we're adding a mouse listener and not that mouse motion listener down here, so many times I've been adding stuff into here like why isn't this working? And it's the mouse listener, mouse motion listener. So yeah, be really careful when you're doing that. But we're gonna program the mouse motion listener here. Mouse adapter, new mouse adapter, and we need to add, I think there's two methods, public void mouse moved, mouse event E, public void mouse, what is it, dragged E, oh yeah, and there's public void mouse entered, there we go. Alright, and add override to all of these. Alright, so we've got our mouse moved, mouse dragged, mouse entered, mouse exited. mouse pressed, mouse released, mouse clicked. So we've programmed all of that. What time are we on? 10 minutes right now, so yeah. I'll continue on till maybe 15 or so. So now in our mouse events here, we can just add public void mouse pressed, and that can take mouse event E, and we can import this. And then there's public void mouse released, mouse event E, and then there's public void mouse moved, mouse dragged, although I don't think we'll be using mouse dragged. Yes, okay, now that we've set up these, mouse press, mouse release, mouse move, mouse dragged, we can start programming them. So, first things first, let's program that when you hover over the thing, when you hover over the block, it draws the square around the selected block. So what we would have to do for this is we need to go into the mouse moved, because we're detecting when it moves over a block, and we would first need to get the x and the y of the mouse. Int x equals e dot get x, not get button, and int y equals e dot get y. We will need to next, let me think quickly. We'll need the x and y of the player, which we can grab from the rectangle, I think. Yeah, player rect. So int, we can just use that. Px equals player rectangle dot x, and int py equals player rectangle. Ugh, when I can spell it right. Y. Alright, and now under here I'm gonna add a comment here. Drawing methods. We can make another method. It can be private void draw block outline. That can take graphics G, and we can say g.setColor to color.black after we import the color. And now we can draw the block. Yeah, sorry, my mind was somewhere else. Draw rectangle. And now we can say what we're going to need is an x and a y for where the rectangle should hover, and this is going to need to be updated as we go. So let's come up here to the top with our global variables and just make a comment, block variables, I guess, and we can say int hover x and hover y, and that will be where the thingy hovers. Wait, let me just check. It is, yeah, x, y, then width and height, and then it should be the width and the height of the block. So we can just go world dot blocks and just get any of them, and we'll just say the width of it and then the height of it as well, if I just copy this, and height. There we go. Alright, now that we've got that, we can now draw our block's outline. We need to draw it, but we need a variable to make sure that the mouse is actually hovering. So here we can say, first make that private, and then we can make another private boolean called hovering, and then down here we can say if hovering, then draw block outline with G, and let's make hovering equal to something. Let's make it equal to false first of all. Alright, so now that that's set up, all we have to do in our mouse moved is somehow set the hovering to true. So let's do that now. Now this is going to be it's going to be a massive if statement because we need to check for every single block. So first we'll do a for loop. Int I equals 0, I is less than world dot array number, and I plus plus. And now in here we need a really massive if statement. We need to say if the mouse is within the x and y boundaries of the block, and the block is solid, and that should be it, I think. So if we go, if the world.blocks, or actually, if the x, so that's the x of the mouse, if the x of the mouse is greater than world.blocks I dot x, so if it's greater than the x and x is less than world.blocks I x plus world dot blocks I dot width. There we go. So if the x of the mouse is greater than the x of the block and the x is less than the x plus the width. So that's if it's in like the kind of x boundaries. And now we'll do the same with the height, and I'm going to copy this because it's easier, and I'll add the and thingy here. And now I can change this to y. So if the y is greater than that, and y, and the y, and the y here, plus the height. And also, if it's solid, so if world.blocks I dot is solid, oh wait, it's not that, is it? It's dot is solid I. So if that's true, that should be it, I think. Yeah, so we can set hovering equal to true. And then we can say else hovering equals false. Now what we want to do is break from this once it's become true. The reason being that if we didn't, once say we're hovering over the grass and we move up to the sky, then the block we were hovering over on the grass would stay solid, or would stay having the outline, rather than it disappearing. And that's reminded me we need to set hover x equal to the current x of the block, so world.blocks I.x, and hover y equals world.blocks I.y. Alright, so hopefully that made sense. Now I'm thinking I can show you this now. If we come over to our game panel, and we can now go to our mouse motion listener, and we can say p1 dot, let's see, mouse moved, pass in e. That should be good. Let me just try this out. Yeah, okay, so that's worked well. We've got our mouse moving, and as you can see, the blocks, as we move the blocks around, it highlights it. So we can effectively do that now. And actually, if you can see, the block kind of... actually, I think it's alright. We will implement some more stuff later. But when we're moving our mouse, obviously our player up here can't reach down here. We need some kind of radius. So let's program a kind of radius for the player. So let's say standing on this one, maybe 1, 2, 3 blocks. 3 blocks either side, so around 3 blocks. We will program that in the next tutorial, hopefully. So that's it for this tutorial, guys. It's been a long tutorial, so